I never thought that at 33 I'd be living with my parents again in Cleveland, paying rent to use the room that was once mine. I wake up every day at 6:45 in the morning, make my daughter's breakfast, warm milk, bread with jelly, and a sliced banana, and leave everything ready before going to work. Her hair is still messy, and she's asleep with her arm over the brown teddy bear she got on her 5th birthday. I like watching her sleep. It's the only time the house feels quiet, when her breathing muffles the background noise. My parents always say the rent I pay helps with the household bills. I pretend to believe them. Deep down, I know they use the money to cover the mortgage, but I don't question it. I pay for peace. The routine is predictable. I work at a small office supply store downtown, come home around 6:30, and find my father on the couch with the newspaper, my mother in the kitchen complaining about grocery prices. Sometimes it feels like I'm stuck in time. At first, I thought it would be temporary, a stopover until I got back on my feet after the divorce. But 1 year turned into 2, and now the house no longer welcomes me. It merely tolerates me. Still, there's a part of me that insists on being grateful. I wash the dishes before my mother can complain. I avoid using the laundry room on weekends because my father likes to watch the game in silence. My daughter, on the other hand, still believes everything is simple. She thinks living with her grandparents is a kind of prize, a house full of stories and cookies. I let her believe it. But sometimes during dinner, I notice my mother's look when my daughter calls me. There's something contained there, a mix of impatience and judgment. She never understood what it means to raise a child alone. When I got divorced, she said I had to be stronger, that men cheat, but homes stay together. Only the home no longer existed. What remained was this space where I paid a fit. One night, around 10 o'clock, I heard my father talking on the phone in the hallway. He was laughing softly, saying something about the youngest one coming back. I pretended not to hear, but curiosity grew. My sister had always been the kind of person who fills the air, the youngest, the favorite, the one who always had ready-made excuses. I tried not to think about it, but there was something in my father's tone that sounded final, like someone announcing an inevitable change. The next morning, while I was putting my daughter in the car, my mother dropped the news as casually as commenting on the weather. Your sister's coming back next week. Nothing more. No detail. Just that bit of information hanging in the air. My stomach tightened, and without knowing why, I spent the rest of the day imagining what it would be like to share a roof with her again. She showed up on a cloudy Thursday afternoon, around 4 o'clock. I was just getting home from work, still wearing my badge around my neck. The car in front had the trunk open, packed to the brim with suitcases. In the middle of that mess, her, with a rounded belly, a rehearsed smile, and an expensive perfume that didn't match my parents' garage. My father rushed to help her. It was as if they had rehearsed the scene for days. Look who's here, she said. My sister spoke to me as if we had never fought, as if the years apart had erased everything. I didn't know you still lived here, she said, looking down the hallway, taking in every detail of the house that suddenly seemed to belong to her again. I work nearby, I answered dryly. Her voice still had that tone of someone who always knows more, who's always right, and even pregnant, or maybe because of it, she seemed to dominate the room. During dinner, my mother set out the best porcelain plate for her and even served her food. I watched the gesture, trying not to show anything. My daughter looked confused, glancing at me, then at her aunt, trying to understand what was so special. The house, once quiet, now breathed a different kind of air. Heavy, dense. After everyone went to bed, I stayed alone in the kitchen, washing the dishes no one else wanted to wash, and I thought about how easy it was for her to take up space. It always was. Since childhood, she was the one who cried the loudest, the one who said, "I want," and got it. When I became a mother, I expected some recognition. I thought my mother would draw closer. But she told me that being a mother is about learning on your own. Now, with her favorite daughter pregnant, she smiled again. She cut fruit for her, bought expensive vitamins, and said, "Rest, sweetheart," with the tender voice I hadn't heard in years. One night, I found the two of them in the living room laughing at something I couldn't hear. I stopped at the doorway unintentionally. My mother was holding her hand saying, "You were always strong, even as a little girl." I wanted to laugh or say something, but I could only walk upstairs to my room. My daughter was asleep on the couch, hugging the bear. I picked her up in my arms and whispered that everything was okay. A simple lie, but a necessary one. In the following days, the small invasions began. My sister would leave her shoes in the middle of the hallway. She'd change the TV channel while my daughter and I were watching cartoons. She spread clothes all over the bathroom, talked loudly on the phone, complained about the smell of the coffee I made. My mother said they were pregnancy things, that I needed to be patient. Favoritism had become routine again, as if time had never passed. Sometimes I wondered if the problem was me, if I somehow attracted conflict. But all it took was one look at the way my sister stared at me, that mix of pity and disdain, to know it wasn't paranoia. She wanted the same thing as always, to be the center. That Sunday, during breakfast, she announced, "I think I'll stay here for a while." My parents smiled. No one asked what I thought. The cracks began in silence. At first, they were just small disputes. Who cooked, who washed first, who used the bathroom in the morning. But soon it became routine. Conflicts where every move was calculated to irritate the other. One Saturday morning, I went into the kitchen and found my sister stirring pots. "I'm making breakfast," she said, without looking at me. There was a pot of milk boiling on the stove. My mother showed up right after, smiling, and said, "Look how lucky we are. Breakfast's ready." I looked at the 3 cups on the table. None for me. It wasn't a coincidence. I did what I always do when I want to avoid a disaster. I stayed quiet. The next Sunday, she was in the laundry room, clothes spread everywhere. I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral, "Are you going to take long? I need to dry my daughter's uniform." She answered without turning around. "What? Can't you wait a bit?" My mother, walking down the hallway, said in a soft tone, "Let her finish, dear. You're always in such a rush." Dear. The way she said it, it sounded more like a reprimand than a request. I swallowed hard and went upstairs. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and remembered when my daughter was born. I was alone, my body aching, milk leaking, and my mother on the phone saying, "You have to learn how to be a mother. No one's going to do it for you." Back then, I thought that was strength. Now I see it was neglect disguised as a lesson. That night, I lay next to my daughter. She slept peacefully, and I ran my fingers through her hair, as if trying to remember why I was still there. I could leave. Of course I could. I had a job, some money saved. But leaving would mean she'd be alone all day with a babysitter, or worse, in some random apartment far from the few familiar faces that still brought her comfort. Yet sometimes, while rinsing dishes or folding her clothes, anger would rise. Hot, pulsing, almost freeing. It was strange to feel relief at the thought of leaving. My sister kept growing inside that house like a shadow. My parents orbited around her, alert to her every need. When she complained of nausea, my mother rushed to make ginger tea. When I came home from work exhausted, no one asked if I had eaten. One night, after dinner, my sister came up to the couch where I was sitting and said in a low voice, "Must be hard, huh? Watching someone get treated the way you always wanted to be." I froze. She smiled, pleased with the blow. My mother appeared soon after and asked if everything was okay. "It's great," my sister replied before I could say anything. I went to my room and cried quietly, because there was nowhere else I could exist. The house that sheltered me was also the place that diminished me, and I didn't know it yet, but that was only the beginning. Morning started to feel heavy. The sound of doors slamming, low voices in the hallway became my alarm clock. My daughter woke up tense, even before opening her eyes. Sometimes I'd find her curled up on the couch, hugging the bear, shoulders hunched as if waiting for someone to yell. Respect in that house had turned into a minefield. My sister made comments disguised as jokes. "You still have that old car? How brave." Or, "Oh sure, who needs a husband when you have such generous parents?" My mother pretended not to hear. My father buried himself in the newspaper. One afternoon, I came home from work and found my daughter's room ransacked. The window open, toys scattered, clothes on the floor. My sister said she'd needed the space to fold some baby clothes. I felt my blood rise, but her tone was so casual, so confident, that it seemed impossible to question. "You're overreacting," my mother said when I tried to explain. That was the day I started recording. The phone sat discreetly on the dresser or the kitchen counter. I didn't have a plan. It was just reflex, a desperate attempt not to lose my mind. Sometimes I didn't even listen to the recordings afterward. I just needed proof that it was happening, that I wasn't imagining it. The arguments built up in small doses. A plate accidentally broken. A missing towel. My sister saying, "This is temporary, you know?" And me pretending not to understand. At night, my daughter and I stayed in our room with the door locked. She drew pictures and said everything was fine, but her lines trembled. I'd hug her, and she'd whisper, "Is Auntie mad at me?" I never knew how to answer. I began to feel like a visitor in my own life. And the worst part was watching my daughter learn to walk on tiptoe around the house, as if apologizing for existing. One night, around 9, I heard my mother and sister arguing in the living room. My sister's voice, sharp and dry, said something like, "She should just leave already." I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding. When they noticed me there, silence fell suddenly. My mother just looked at me and asked, "Do you need something?" I shook my head. Went to my room and closed the door. I thought about leaving. But where to? I had no courage, no strength, only fear and guilt for feeling afraid. The next day, my phone buzzed with a bank notification. The rent had been automatically withdrawn. I smiled to myself, bitterly, still paying to live in a place where I couldn't breathe. Around 11 that night, as I tried to sleep, I heard a whisper from the room next door. "We should take care of this soon." Then a short, dry laugh, familiar. I didn't know what "take care of this" meant. Update 1. The following week, I started to notice the atmosphere changing. My sister walked around the house with a strange confidence, as if she knew something I didn't. My parents barely spoke to me. My daughter started crying when I told her I was going to work. She said she didn't want to stay with Grandma and Auntie. I began to feel panic growing slowly, that sense that something bad had already been decided, it just hadn't happened yet. And without realizing it, that was exactly what was coming. It was raining that Friday, a fine, stubborn drizzle that left the air cold. The clock read 7:40 in the evening when I parked in front of the house. For a moment, I thought I had forgotten some important date, a birthday maybe, because there were boxes on the porch, many of them. When I got out of the car and came closer, the boxes were mine. Clothes, toys, books, even my daughter's school backpack, all stacked together, damp from the rain. She was there, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, face calm, too calm. "What is this?" I asked. "You still don't get it?" She replied, as if I were a slow child. "It's space. I need space." My daughter was sitting on a step, holding the brown teddy bear, her big eyes full of tears. "Who did this, sweetheart?" I asked her. "Grandma and Auntie," she said. "They told me to wait for you here." The ground spun beneath me. I knocked on the door. "Mom? Dad?" Silence. I knocked again, harder. I heard a sound from upstairs, a door closing. "They're tired," my sister said, still standing there. And honestly, so am I. I took a step forward. "I pay rent. You can't just throw me out." She smiled. "Pay? Got any receipts? A contract?" Her laugh rang loud on the porch. "Please, don't start," I begged, trying to stay calm. But she already had. "You live here leeching off them. It's pathetic." Her voice rose a notch. "Maybe if you'd been a decent wife, your husband wouldn't have left you." I felt my daughter clutch my leg. And then I realized this wasn't a fight. It was an execution. I tried to go in, but she blocked the way. "If you touch me, I'll call the police. You really want to see how this ends?" I took a deep breath. It was useless. My parents locked inside. Her, pregnant, steady, and laughing. And me, with rain on my back, holding my daughter's hand. I dragged the boxes to the car in silence. My daughter cried, saying she was cold. I tried to comfort her. Before getting into the car, I looked back at the house one last time. The living room curtain moved. Someone was there, watching, but no one opened the door. I drove aimlessly for about 20 minutes before stopping in front of a cheap roadside motel. I asked for a simple room, paid in cash. The receptionist didn't ask any questions. Inside the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and let my daughter sleep. She was out in minutes, exhausted. I stared at the ceiling. Everything felt unreal. What I felt wasn't anger. It was disbelief. I woke up so many times during the night, I lost count. When the sun started to rise, the only thing I knew for sure was that I would never go back to that house. Ever again. The next day, I went to work as if nothing had happened. I arrived at the store at 8:25 in the morning, my body running on autopilot. I smiled when someone asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. The lie came easily, like someone who's practiced it. My coworker Allison noticed. She always does. During lunch break, she pulled me aside near the copy machine. "Did you sleep?" "Sort of." "What happened?" For a second, I thought about making something up. But when I looked at her, so straightforward, I realized I couldn't pretend. I told her almost everything, without names, without drama, just the facts. Me, my daughter, the rain, the boxes on the porch. She stayed silent, eyes wide. Then she said calmly, "I've got a couch and an empty room." It took me a few seconds to understand. She went on, "I live in Lakewood, near the station. Rent's cheap, the building's quiet. We could split it if you want." I wanted to say I didn't need it, but the truth was, I did. Badly. "I'll take it," I said. "Just for a while. Stay as long as you want," she said. That night, after work, I went back to the motel, packed our things, and drove to Lakewood. The air was cold, and my daughter slept in the back seat, hugging the bear. The apartment was in an old building. The couch was worn, but clean. It was enough. In the first few days, life settled into a crooked but possible rhythm. I enrolled my daughter in a public school in the neighborhood. She cried on the first day, holding my hand until the gate, but the teacher, a gentle-voiced woman named Mrs. Benton, promised to take care of her. When I came to pick her up, she was laughing, holding a drawing, glitter in her hair. Little by little, we built a new routine. Work, school pickup, dinner with Allison, quiet TV time. The couch became a bed, then a home. It wasn't comfort, but it was peace. Every now and then, I thought about my parents' house. I imagined the lights on, the TV noise, my sister's voice filling the place. Sometimes a strange impulse made me almost call, but I stopped. I remembered my daughter's face, small and scared, waiting on the porch that night. One evening, she asked me, "Are we going back to Grandma's house?" I said no. "Why not?" I thought for a moment and said, "Because now we have our own home." She smiled, satisfied, not realizing that I was also trying to believe it. Winter came early that year. And it was during that brief stretch of calm that the phone started ringing again. The calls began on a Tuesday morning, just before 10. The number on the screen was the house phone, my parents' landline, which they still kept as if time had never passed. I thought about ignoring it, but answered. "Sweetheart, the bank sent a message," my father said, his voice anxious. "The mortgage payment didn't go through this month. And what does that have to do with me?" I asked, already knowing where this was heading. "It's just that," he hesitated. "You've always helped." The word helped irritated me immediately. I hadn't helped. I'd paid. For years, my money had kept that house standing. "Dad, I don't live there anymore," I said. "It doesn't make sense for me to keep paying." There was silence on the other end. Then he said more quietly, "If you stop paying, the bank will take our house." I stared out the office window and realized he wasn't asking. He was trying to guilt me. That same day, the messages from my mother came. Long ones, full of sentences starting with, "Do you remember when?" and ending with, "We've always been by your side." By my side? I couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. During the week, more calls came. 1, 2, then 4, 5 times a day. When I didn't answer, they left voicemails. "Think about your family. Your father isn't sleeping. Do you know how much it costs to lose a house?" The strangest part was realizing I no longer felt anger, just exhaustion. One cold night, I sat on Allison's couch, a mug of tea in my hands. She asked what was going on. I told her everything, this time with no filter. She listened quietly, then said, "Sounds like they got used to your help." I nodded, and I let them. It was the first time I admitted it. I had fed that dependence myself. Ever since I'd moved back in with them, I'd accepted the terms without question, paid rent that was never rent. When I hung up the phone that night, I felt something different. Not guilt, a kind of clarity. I realized my family had always had the gift of turning need into emotional debt, and for years, I'd paid it out of fear of being the ungrateful daughter. The next morning, another message from my mother arrived. "Your father's desperate. Are you really going to let the bank take the house?" I typed slowly. "You left me and your granddaughter on the street. Now you want me to save what's left?" "No." I pressed send and turned the phone face down. The silence that followed was the first thing resembling peace I'd had in a long time. During breakfast, Allison joked, "If they call again, tell them to talk to the finance department." I laughed, for the first time in weeks, but the laughter didn't last long. Deep down, I knew they hadn't given up, and something worse was about to happen. Almost 8 months had passed since the last call. Life had finally settled into a predictable rhythm. Work, school, grocery store, home. I no longer looked at my phone in fear of seeing their names on the screen. Until that day. It was a gray Wednesday, the end of winter, when the store's security guard called me to the front. "There's a couple here asking for you," he said. "They said they're your parents." My heart started racing. When I reached the lobby, I saw them. Thinner, hair messy, clothes wrinkled. My mother was holding a baby, a boy, maybe 6 or 7 months old, sleeping, his round face peaceful. "We need to talk," my father said bluntly. "Not here," I replied. "I'm at work. It's urgent," he insisted. I led them into a small room. They sat down, and my mother started crying almost immediately. "We lost the house," my father said. "The bank put it up for sale." "What do you mean?" I asked. "We couldn't pay the installments after you stopped sending money," he answered, his voice trembling. "We used what was left of our savings, but it wasn't enough." I looked at the baby in my mother's arms. "And this baby, he's your sister's son," she said, looking down. "Her husband, he kicked her out." A chill ran through me. "Kicked her out?" "He found out the baby isn't his. She lied to everyone, said he'd been transferred for work to another country, that the marriage was fine, all made up." My mother rocked the baby, avoiding my eyes. Anger came first, then pity. Pity for them, for still believing they could fix everything with tears. And pity for myself, for still feeling anything at all. "So what did you come to ask me for?" I said. "Help," my father said. "If we pay the overdue amounts, the bank manager might stop the sale. We just need some time." "Money, you mean?" I said. He nodded silently. I thought about all the times they told me, "Be mature, don't complain, it's just a loan." I thought about the rain, the boxes, my daughter waiting on the porch. The baby started crying. My mother tried to soothe him, rocking him back and forth. "Please," she said. "It's our house. It's where you grew up." The word "our" hurt. I hadn't been part of that hour for a long time. I told them I needed to think. They nodded, eyes wet, still clinging to hope. When they left, I sat alone for a few minutes, trying to make sense of what I felt. Anger, of course, but also calculation. It was strange to realize that, for the first time, I was the one holding the power. And that, as sad as it was, gave me a sense of control. Update 2. That night, I told my boss everything. She listened carefully without interrupting. After a few minutes, she said, "What if you bought the house?" I froze. She explained, You've already paid for most of it, even without your name on the deed. If you take over the late payments and continue the mortgage, you could have the property transferred to you. I know a lawyer who can help. I spent the rest of the night thinking about it, and I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. And maybe the chance to end that story differently. I waited 3 days before calling. I wanted to be sure it wasn't anger driving me, but clarity. It was a Saturday morning. I took a deep breath and dialed the house number, the one I still knew by heart, even though I wished I didn't. My father answered on the third ring. "Hi, sweetheart," he said, with a relief so forced it sounded rehearsed. "Can we talk about the house?" I asked. Silence for a few seconds. "Of course." I explained calmly, each word deliberate. I said I could pay the overdue installments and continue the mortgage, but the house would have to be transferred to my name, not as a favor, but as an agreement. The deed and the mortgage would be under my responsibility. I'd handle everything, I continued. You could keep living there if you want, but not with my sister. On the other end, I heard only his breathing. "You want to buy the house?" he asked. "I want to resolve it," I said, "and this is the only way." He asked for time to think. I agreed. After hanging up, I sat for a while, staring out the window. That afternoon, my mother called. Her voice was trembling, the tone of someone trying to appeal to emotion. "Sweetheart, what you're proposing, it's a lot. It's fair," I said. "And your sister?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "She won't live there anymore." Silence. "She's got the baby. She has nowhere to go." "That's not my problem," I said. On the other end, a long, heavy sigh. "You're being cruel." "I'm just being clear." I hung up before her tears could turn into persuasion. On Monday, I told my boss the proposal had been made. She smiled, pleased. "Did they accept?" "Not yet," I said. I spent the rest of the day trying not to think about it. But the phone stayed quiet. Inside, I could already see them making their choice, the same one they always had. They'd rather lose the house than admit the wrong daughter had been the one keeping them afloat all those years. That night, in my room, I wrote everything down in a notebook. Dates, amounts, names, old messages. Not out of revenge, but protection. That week, no calls, no messages, nothing. I started to accept that silence as their answer. Still, for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. The next days turned into a blur of papers, phone calls, and bank visits. It all began when my boss introduced me to the lawyer, a thin man with a calm voice named Mr. Whitaker. He met me in a small office. "Do you have proof that you paid the previous installments?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. I opened the folder I'd been carrying for weeks. Bank statements, transfer receipts, screenshots of messages. Each document was a piece of my story turning into evidence. He flipped through them silently. "This is more than enough," he said finally. "But be prepared. The process isn't just legal, it's emotional." I nodded, not needing him to explain. Over the next few weeks, my life became a cycle of spreadsheets and consultations. I requested copies of old contracts, searched the mortgage history, wrote declarations. With every completed step, a part of me trembled, afraid something might go wrong, afraid my parents would find out too soon, afraid I was dreaming too big. At night, after putting my daughter to bed, I sat at the table and went over everything again. A few days later, I received the first email with the subject, "Property transfer, initial stage." I read and reread it until I had it memorized. The bank's name, the house address, the clauses I barely understood, all there in black and white. When Mr. Whitaker called to say the documents were almost ready, my hands started sweating. "We just need the final bank signature," he said. "After that, it's yours." It's yours. Those two words echoed in my mind. That Sunday, I took my daughter for a drive down the street. I parked at the corner, just close enough to see the house. The window still had the same curtains, the paint a little chipped. My daughter asked, "Mommy, is this where we used to live?" "It was," I said. "And now it's ours?" I smiled, unsure whether to answer, "Not yet," or "Almost." I ended up saying, "We're getting close." She ran down the sidewalk. I stood there watching. The call from Mr. Whitaker came on a Friday morning, a little after 10. I was at work. I answered without expecting much, and heard the words that still echo today. "The deed's been approved. The house is officially yours." It took me a few seconds to understand. The feeling was like releasing a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. That same week, I drove to the registry office. The clerk handed me a brown envelope with a copy of the deed and a new key. When I got there, my daughter ran straight to the yard, laughing as if time had rewound. "Can I pick my room color?" she asked. "You can," I said, a lump in my throat. "Pick any color you want." The following days were spent painting walls, changing bulbs, sweeping away memories. On Monday, they showed up, unannounced. My father, my mother, and right behind them, my sister, thinner, tired-looking, the baby in her arms. My father spoke first. "So it's true." I nodded. "Everything's in my name now." My mother stepped forward, trying to smile, We just wanted to talk. About what? I asked, without opening the door wider. About what you plan to do, she said. After all, that house is part of the family. The baby started crying, and my sister put on a show of weakness. I have nowhere to go, she said. I just need some time. The sound of her voice brought back memories of rain, boxes, the porch, of my daughter's eyes that night. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry, I said, and realized it was true for the first time. But I can't let you in, she pleaded, eyes full of tears. You're getting revenge. No, I said. I'm protecting myself. Behind her, my mother crossed her arms. You've always been selfish. I smiled without anger. For a few seconds, no one spoke. I left the door half open. They looked at me, waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. Then, calmly, I closed the door. My daughter appeared on the stairs, hands covered in paint. It's looking pretty, Mommy. I smiled. It is, sweetheart. It's looking just the way we want it. Life reorganized itself slowly. Wake up, make breakfast, take my daughter to school. Sometimes I still think about my parents and my sister, if they're okay. But I don't feel resentment. Life went on. There's no happy ending, just one that makes sense. And after everything, that's more than I ever expected. Story number 2.